everything's okay. I always have something whiny to say. The sun is too bright, the night is too dark. My car is brand new but too hard to park. I bitch and complain, my dear old friend. The gripes just keep coming, they never end. I love to complain, 'cause I've got the knack. I'll smile to your face and sneer at your back. The chair's too hard, the bed's too soft. The neighbors are loud, their dog's always lost. The weather's too windy, the air feels too dry. Your ice cream melts like it's trying to cry. Every silver lining has a stain. I grumble at the sun, and when it starts to rain, I bitch and complain, my dear old friend. The gripes just keep coming, they never end. I love to complain, 'cause I've got the knack. I'll smile to your face and sneer at your back. You'd argue with the mirror for showing your face. You critique a rainbow for being out of place. If perfection came knocking, you'd slam the door, because whining's the one thing you truly adore.
I walked into the shop, a kingdom of dreams. Shelves stacked high, bursting at the seams. Little cars and planes. When I was 10, they called my name. Now I'm 68 and I feel the same. I've got $100, it's burning a hole. My heart's the map, my joy's the goal. A hobby shop, heart never grows old. Plastic treasures in boxes, waiting to unfold. Let the happiness flow and the world rewind. I'm 68, going on 9. Glue on my fingers, a model half built. The clock's ticking fast, but I feel no guilt. Paint stains my shirt, a badge of pride. Lost in a world that time can't hide. A rocket ship, a dinosaur roar, imagining how I'll sneak it in the door. I'll stay right here till I decide which of these models will be my pride. A hobbit ship, ha, ha, it bucks, it's burning a hole. My heart's the map, my joy's the goal. My joy's the goal unfold. A hobby shop, heart never grows old. Plastic treasures in boxes, waiting to unfold. Let the happiness flow and the world rewind. I'm 68, going on 9.
Science fiction models on the table again. Strange new worlds in a plastic skin. Starships pose with their flashing lights. Built up dreams done just right. Plastic cosmos holding tight. Neon worlds in the dead of night. Warp drives hum under desk lamp light. Kits and dioramas take me in flight. Cutting sprues with a razor blade. Happy with the kit I made. Alien skies and moonlit haze. Chasing stars through my model maze. I'm a demigod with a cool death ray. Building warp-driven ships on a Saturday. Plastic cosmos holding tight. Neon worlds in the dead of night. Warp drives hum under desk lamp light. Kits and dioramas taking me in flight. Lost in a world of plastic and dreams. Staring at panels and sanding down seams. Blue fumes rise and fog my brain. Rockets and saucers and aeroplanes.
Legendary Godzilla feeling insecure, cause the Toho version still endures. The Tarbis shields are set to max, cause they're heading right at me and making tracks. Both Godzillas just need to relax. It's a fight, it's a clash, scales and claws, smash and thrash. Over my shed, over my head, it's Godzilla war till one is dead. Ghost of Toho with the ghostly stare, looking down that other reptile's glare. Tail slam, jaw snap, claws thrash, fans clap, the old and new slash and tear. But my poor shed ain't got a prayer. Big scales rain, back blades fly, oh my poor Tarbis even survives a fight. It's a clash, scales and spirits smash and thrash. Over my shed, over my head, it's Godzilla war till one is dead. Oh, Trek is picking Kirk or Picard. Just tell me why. Settle it in my yard.
The coffee's too hot, the toast is too cold, the Wi-Fi's too slow, the stories are old, the sun is too bright, it hurts my poor eyes. It's bright outside, I prefer gray skies. Oh, gripe and whine, my dear old friend. The complaints, they never end. Oh, gripe and complain, you've got the knack. Your glass is half empty and there's a crack. The chair's too hard, the bed's too soft, the neighbors are loud, their dog's always lost. The weather's too windy, the air feels too dry. Even your ice cream melts too fast to try. Every silver lining has a stain. You even grumble when it starts to rain. Oh, gripe and whine, my dear old friend. The complaints, they never end. Oh, gripe and complain, you've got the knack. Your glass is half empty and there's a crack. You'd argue with a mirror for showing your face. You'd critique a rainbow for being out of place. If perfection came knocking, you'd slam the door, because whining's the one thing you truly adore.
Please don't tell Scotty the warp drive won't light. The wires and LEDs fit is too tight. Forbidden Planet Star Cruiser looks like it died. The Millennium Falcon looks like I pimped my ride. My Star Trek ship's got a tilted nacelle. The saucer section's gone straight to hell. Robot from Lost in Space is laughing at me. The whole shuttlecraft is stuck on my knee. Please don't tell Scotty the warp drive won't light. The wires and LEDs fit is too tight. Forbidden Planet's testing my grace. Lost in my work on Lost in Space. Why do the lights flicker? Why won't they glow? I soldered and taped, but the power won't flow. Captain Kirk would never deal with this mess. I think I'm losing my model builder finesse. Skywalker's X-Wing sags, no matter how hard I try. I glued it back on, now it looks like a Y. The Jupiter 2 looks like a big tater chip. I'll use the Death Star as a bowl for some dip.
He drew pictures of cars for a hot rod magazine. He worked in the playpen making cars and trucks look mean. Then he got an offer to design a truck in styrene, and that kicked off a line of mean machines. That's how Tom Daniel Kits got their start.
Model cars and trucks with the coolest parts will live forever deep inside our hearts. Thank you, TD, for our childhood dream cars.
The beer truck and mean machine are wicked cool. School bus and pie wagon models rule.
Choppers and cars, he always gave us something new. Rommel's rod and the Red Baron T-Bucket hot rod too. That's how Tom Daniel kits got their start. Model cars and trucks with the coolest parts will live forever deep inside our hearts. Thank you, TD, for our childhood dream cars.
Tarantula and the vampire trike sat on the shelf beside the popper chopper bike.
Troublemaker and Sweet Tea are ready for dragging.
See the fun those kids in the sand crab are having. I grew up in a world where these models were king. The Tijuana taxi and pie wagon kind of things. That's how Tom Daniel kits got their start.
Model cars and trucks with the coolest parts will live forever deep inside our hearts. Thank you, TD, for our childhood dream cars. Thank you, TD, for our childhood dream cars.
I love to grind when everything's okay. I always have something whiny to say. The sun is too bright, the night is too dark. My car is brand new but too hard to park. I bitch and complain, my dear old friend. The gripes just keep coming, they never end. I love to complain, 'cause I've got the knack. I'll smile to your face and sneer at your back. The chair's too hard, the bed's too soft. The neighbors are loud, their dog's always lost. The weather's too windy, the air feels too dry. Your ice cream melts like it's trying to cry. Every silver lining has a stain. I grumble at the sun, and when it starts to rain, I bitch and complain, my dear old friend. The gripes just keep coming, they never end. I love to complain, 'cause I've got the knack. I'll smile to your face and sneer at your back. You'd argue with the mirror for showing your face.
walked into the shop, a kingdom of dreams. Shelves stacked high, bursting at the seams. Little cars and planes. When I was 10, they called my name. Now I'm 68 and I feel the same. I've got $100, it's burning a hole. My heart's the map, my joy's the goal. A hobby shop, heart never grows old. Plastic treasures in boxes, waiting to unfold. Let the happiness flow and the world rewind. I'm 68, going on 9. Glue on my fingers, a model half built. The clock's ticking fast, but I feel no guilt. Paint stains my shirt, a badge of pride. Lost in a world that time can't hide. A rocket ship, a dinosaur roar. Imagining how I'll sneak it in the door. I'll stay right here till I decide which of these models will be my pride. A hobbit ship, ha, ha, it bucks, it's burning a hole. My heart's the map, my joy's the goal. My joy's the goal unfold. A hobby shop, heart never grows old. Plastic treasures in boxes, waiting to unfold. Let the happiness flow and the world rewind. I'm 68, going on 9.
Science fiction models on the table again.
Okay, well, hello, Glue Troopers. Max and Max's Models here. And a little bad news. It's just going to be me tonight. Ken is on the road and Steve is out of town. And he's dealing with some things. So he did not have a good day. So anyway, so you guys are stuck with me tonight. And, okay, I'm still hearing some background noise coming in here. Make sure I got that turned down all the way. There we go. I managed with it. That's right. What does he said in the movie Real Genius? You know, when the guy's having his house built, he walks by, he sees a construction worker sitting on his butt, and he goes, "You're paid to labor. Labor. That's what you get for not staying in school." Anyway, so the guys will hopefully be with us next week, but Ken, as like I say, is he and Debbie are on the road, and Steve is out of town, so and dealing with stuff. So there you go, there you have it. I'm all you get tonight, but I'm worth every penny you're going to pay for it. So first off, get a voice check. Can you guys hear me? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're still running about a 20-second loop, so by the time I get it to you and you type it in and say it to me, it'll be 20 odd seconds later. And yeah, the Popsy Twins. Oh, that is not going away anytime. I am so going to steal that. I don't know if Ken's listening on the road, but anyway, 1 a.m. in Poland. I mean, because Kent. Poor life. Well, thank you, Super BZL. As life of a freight dog, right, brother? So I thought, first off, I know a lot of you guys get Mike Machat's VIP newsletter, as do I, and I decided that what he talked about, and I think I emailed and told him I was going to do this, but I downloaded the pictures from that as a jump off point for tonight. He did a recent VIP newsletter about aircraft that did go operational, but in very limited numbers. And I thought that's a pretty interesting subject. Some of these airplanes, I would imagine we've covered before, but it's going to be more about the models than the airplanes, but the things are kind of inextricably linked. And you're going to see a lot of anagram models because, as a lot of us know, Anagram makes models of a lot of stuff that's specialty oriented. My guess is they're only doing 50 to 100 pulls on any other kits. But man, they do. I don't care how obscure it is. Odds are they've done it at some point. So, also, I'll be trying to read the comment stream at the same time. But no cost service. Okay, full disclosure, I was at Hurricane Hobbies today for the third day in a row. I ran out of flat clear and I needed to get some for the Betty Bomber. And my phone goes chirp, 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 and goes, 5:40 live stream alert. I have an alert set up on my phone. What are you talking about? I thought it was Friday. Now, luckily, I already had what I wanted to do in my mind and had the source material. But I had to run to the grocery store and do some other stuff, get back to the house, get a shower, because some of you guys might have smell-o-vision. And I was just diving through hoops trying to get this thing put together, but it did. And even got one or two other little things put aside. And one of the things we're going to talk about is what happens when airplanes go bad. But the ignominious end of some relatively famous aircraft. But we'll save that for later. So there are a lot of airplanes that could be on this list that aren't, like the P6M Seamaster. So we're not doing an in-depth study. They have 6 aircraft. I actually just, like I say, yanked them from Mike's list because I thought he made a really good list. And I really have to return what day it is. Yeah, that would be me. And the sad part is, okay, I have become that guy. I've been retired 4 months, and I've already become that guy. I turn my phone off at night, or the sound off, the ringer, so no one wakes me up during my beauty rest, which clearly I need as much of as I can get. I always forget to turn it on in the morning. I mean, almost always. That has not caused any problems. But then I forget what day it is, or get mixed up, or what the date is. And it's taken me a very short amount of time. One thing that, as you all know, having a job does is it gives you a schedule. Even if you're in the airline business or the military, where you don't get. Yeah, but I get double pay for Labor Day. But it's I've just become that guy. And it didn't take long without the structure that a work schedule gives you, and. But is now Niedermeyer. Whenever should have fragged Lieutenant Niedermeyer. But you're with this crowd when someone will write just a 3 or 4 word quip from a movie or say it, and everybody gets. You don't even have to explain it to anyone. I lost Troy when I was still working. Yeah. So. Oh, by the way, next week, the 3rd and 4th, there won't be any content. I'll be going dark for a couple of days to go do some family stuff. So, well, just that. And I have... God. Okay, before we get into the models, just yes or no, does anybody miss Radio Shack? Because now that I'm getting back into lighting the models and I need all these little things that Radio Shack used to carry, the only place I can find them is online. Unless you guys, hardware stores obviously don't carry. There are no electronic stores in the traditional sense anymore. You go to an electronic store, they're selling televisions. And, God, remember when a television was an expensive thing? People were proud of their 24-inch, 500-pound cabinet TV. And now for $100, you can get a gargantuan flat screen that weighs 2 pounds. And oh well, you know what? I don't know what I'm whining about. Yeah. Yes. Everybody misses Radio Shack. We're that could be. I'm the We Miss Radio Shack generation. There's a T-shirt. They're just the Radio Shack generation. That's going to be our secret descriptor. We're all part of the Radio Shack generation. And part of me wonders if there's room for a store like that. But if there was, Radio Shack, it would probably still be in business. Memory lapses are proof you enjoyed the 70s. I don't know if you guys watched Strange New World Star Trek, but we saw it. And the 1,000-year-old crew member they have, the Lanthanite, made a great little quip. You know, they try to give her a drug and it doesn't work. You know, it doesn't do anything for her. She goes, I had the same problem in the 1960s and the 1990s and last July with LSD. But anyway, I just found out something today. Did you guys know that one of the biggest advocates of the use of LSD in the 50s was Cary Grant? That one surprised me. Or should I say Archibald Leach. But anyway, so on the models. Man, well, we've been on the air 7 minutes. I've already sailed off on 3 tangents. That might be a land speed tangent record. So, there are a lot of aircraft, as we all know, that from World War II up into probably the 1970s, there were all kinds of airplanes being made and of course, being replaced at an alarmingly rapid rate. Actually, I should go back to the 30s. And I thought we'd take a look at a few of them that were trend-setting aircraft in their time, had limited runs, but they were outpaced so fast, and the kits of them that are available. And Army TV is still 100-pound CRT. Ha ha, cathode rays forever, baby. Fry those retinas. Make sure you're actually here for the tangents. Well, you won't be disappointed. From Grissom to Germany. Grissom Air Force Base. And, Frank, you beat me to saying Godzilla. And, I wonder if that's how they say bless you. In Germany, they say Gesundheit, which means good health. Or in Japan, they say Godzilla. Achoo, Godzilla. But, anyway, so, back to the flying machines. Actually, we're not going back to them. We're just now getting to them. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, the first one I thought we would talk about is the DC-5. Whoa, wow, I did not set the change rate on that. Okay. Let me just put a pause. There we go. Pause that puppy. A lot of people don't know. They're familiar with the DC-2 and the DC-3 and the DC-4, 5, 6, or 4, 6, 7, blah, 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 blah. But a lot of people don't know that there was actually a DC-5. And this is a pre-war airplane, by the way. Douglas wanted to update find a replacement for the DC-3. This is a 22-seater, so it only had about one more seat than a DC-3. But they were trying to make a more modern airplane, so they made tricycle gear, a little bit better performance. I think it carried one extra passenger. And this airplane was so well thought of that old man Boeing actually had one as his company plane. He really liked it. He thought, of course, him and Don Douglas were friends. I mean, that it wasn't like today where everything was so bloody cutthroat. Yeah, these guys actually, from my understanding, got along quite well. And my guess is, when you're doing the kind of thing they're doing, there aren't a whole lot of people that understand your world. So it's nice to have a kindred spirit. But the DC-5, they made, I believe it was 12 of them. And it came out in 1940, so it came out about a year and a half before the war. And you might go, okay, so why did they build so many DC-3s during the war and not more DC-5s? Well, the DC-5 was a step up from the DC-3, but it wasn't a quantum leap. And Douglas was still making plenty of DC-3s that had a major production line running for it. And there was one airline that bought some of these and operated them over in Europe. I forget if it was Sabina. But anyway, the airplane itself, really just a good, solid Douglas design. No issues or anything. But when war ramped up, everybody needed DC-3s. All the production lines are set up for the DC-3. So they were like, look, we can't mess up the production line to start making these. And we certainly can't, there just wasn't the manpower. And so the military, I think the Navy bought a few of them, operated them. They liked them, but it would have taken away from the C-47s, the R-4Ds, to try and put into this what would be needed to ramp it up. And the C-47, I believe, was a somewhat simpler airplane, easier to build quickly. So this airplane was a victim of timing, I believe, more than anything else. And there's some of them were in service for quite some time, but it was just, you're going to find the problem with a lot of these airplanes was their timing. And I don't know of F Resin and I think Anagran make kits of the airplane, and they're not real big. This is a 1:144 scale airplane, and it's kind of sad because I think it's a great looking airplane. I know it doesn't have a, you know what? I think it was KLM that bought them. I think it was KLM that operated them, but it's a pity. It does look a lot like the Grumman C2, which, by the way, the Grumman C1 and C2 were an offshoot, a development of a near-end war design that was dropped and then picked up later. And that's a whole long story in its own right. But anyway, yes, I had used on Star Trek. It's just a shame. I'd love to see this at least 1/72nd scale. That would be good. That would be a nice. What I would probably do if I got one is put it in fantasy markings, put it in Eastern Airline or West, or Capital Airline markings, something like that. It could have been airplane. I just love airplanes. As you can see, the cockpit, it looks like a DC-3 cockpit. They just added the nose gear. And, that was kind of a thing back then, to have a tricycle gear airplane before World War II. That was, they called tailwheel aircraft conventional gear, and they call these tricycle gear. And when I was learning to fly in the 70s, they still called them conventional gear and tricycle gear, because sitting on your tail was the convention. The tricycle gear was the new thing. And anyway, yes, not only would it be easier to load and unload, but and get passengers on and off of, it also was much easier to taxi, because obviously the crew could see where they were going better. And I could certainly see that. It might have been a little big for a COD plane, because remember, it is about the size of a DC-3, but not outside the realm of possibility. And they probably shorten it a little bit and maybe stub the wings some, different one, but because you'd have to put folding wings on it. I actually saw a kit bash today of a folding wing radial engine P-38 that I think was just a fantasy build, but it did bring up the point that, they're like, why didn't the Navy do something like this with the P-38? And I'm like, they did. They called it the Grumman Tiger Cat. And don't even get me started on the whole Merlin-powered P-38 thing, which never happened. That's I go down that rabbit hole, we'll be here all night. But anyway, I just think that the DC-5 would make an interesting kit, and it's a cool airplane. And definitely, it had the right look. That really looks more like a 50s airplane than a 40s airplane. You can even look at the nose wheel and see a little bit of the early DC-4 technology coming into play there. Why reinvent the wheel? Get the joke. Anyway, so got a turret behind the cockpit. Oh, there you go. DC-3s, C-47s were on occasion pushed into bomber service. In fact, the Bolo, the B-18 Bolo, was essentially a C-47 with a bomber fuselage. Wasn't much of a bomber, but it's what we have when the war broke out, and they did see combat. Mostly just patrol work, but no matter how mediocre an airplane can be, whether it's the Brewster Buffalo or the B-18 Bolo, if it's there when you need it, that's what matters. You fight the war with the weapons that you got. The Conestoga, Dale, you're right. That was a cool airplane, but more of a hump. But interesting concept. It was okay. I don't have a picture of it handy. That would. It was an interesting concept. I think wasn't it supposed to be made out of stainless steel or something? Anyway, it was a big bulbous freight job that was in some ways a little ahead of its time. It just didn't get the development needed, and it came out too late. The next one of my personal favorites, is the Tradewind, the R3Y. Also, a couple of them were classified as P5Ys. Now, I imagine everybody here is probably familiar with this airplane. And yes, it is. That's not just a publicity photo. As a tanker, it could fuel 4 Cougars at one time. And of course, Revell has their very popular kit of it. There were 2 different versions of the airplane, and the kit comes with the contra-rotating propellers. Unfortunately, it had that T40, Allison T40 mix in there, which was a pair of turbine engines that ran through a gearbox for contra-rotating propellers. It was used on the Sky Shark and the I think was it the Pogo. It was used on a bunch of the tail sitters because it was set up for contra-rotating propellers. And unfortunately, they never really worked the bugs out of it. It was always trouble plagued. A lot of shutdowns. I even think they had some in-flight fires. Because, turbine technology was still, turboprop technology was still new. You're intermeshing 2 engines into 1 gearbox and then going out to 2 propellers. So what could possibly go wrong? If you've never seen a contra-rotating prop transmission, they are an interesting piece of work. But personally, I think they would have been better off to have had the engines operate independently and run the outer prop through the forward prop through a hollow shaft on the going through the rear prop. That probably would have cut out a transmission and saved them a lot of trouble. But I've seen some of the British contra-rotating systems for piston engine airplanes, and you look at it and you just kind of scratch your head. But it was a way to capture all the power these engines could deliver. And it probably would have been simpler just to put 6 blades on 1 propeller. But the thing was, this was... Why did I think? Okay, I'm not even going to read that one out loud. You guys can read it. So this actually was a concept that was going to go with the Sea Dart. The Navy was thinking aircraft carriers are vulnerable. If we make our cargo planes and our jets float aircraft, and all we need are a couple of ships to work as tenders, and we don't have a target the enemy can knock out, there's no flat top for them to take out. It was an interesting concept. Remember, we're talking the late 40s, early 50s. Nukes were just becoming a thing. Everybody was afraid if they get through with 1 nuke, they can wipe out the carrier and the battle group. With this way, we could split it up all over the place. It wouldn't give them a solid target. It'd be more mobile. And they were also, as you see in the picture here, talking about using the airplane as a flying LST. The idea being that, hey, we can land these things and pull them right up on shore. Because no one ever watched any footage of the Normandy landings. I've got KLSC. I've got mine right here, and I want to get on it. I love that airplane. I'm a little torn. It looks so good in blue, and it looks so good in the gray paint scheme. I'm not sure which way I'm going to paint it, but pretty straightforward kit too. And but now you could do something like this with the airplane in an uncontested landing, but you're obviously not going to do that on a hot beach, a hot LZ. One of the problems they found, though, was that even under the best of conditions, they didn't want to beach the airplane because they had to reverse prop it out of there. So when they pull up like this, the airplane wouldn't sit still in the water, and it turned out to be extremely difficult to load and unload, and to be honest, quite downright dicey. And this, it was one of those things that I can understand why they thought it was a good idea. It just... once they actually started playing with it, the technical hurdles were more than they were. Just it was going to take a lot of money and a lot of improved technology to make it work. You could do something like this today. In fact, the Russians sort of have with their Berry of 200, but they didn't have the swing open front, although it could, I suppose. I've seen one of those things down at Fort Lauderdale up on its wheels. It's a 66 place airliner that takes off and lands, an amphibian. It's a true amphibian. This, if I'm not mistaken, was a straight-up float plane. You could beach it with docking gears, but it did not have wheels. It was a straight-up float plane. But I thought it was a cool concept that had a lot of potential. Eventually, they had to get rid of those Allison T40s and put regular turboprops on them with single propellers, and lost some of the performance. And they decided this just isn't the way we're going to go. the thing served for a while, and the Navy got some use out of them. They were always pretty problematic, but I have to give them credit for that they just somebody hatched this idea and made it work, and ish. And but my hat's off to them. Convair built the airplane, and I'm convinced that probably the Convair engineers were doing LSD because the B-58 Hustler. You look at some of the airplanes they made; they were just like that. Well, they made to go with this. They made the Sea Dart, I'm thinking somebody got the great idea to put an F-102 on water skis. I don't know what they were smoking, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't legal. And the airplane they made, I think they made 13 of them in total, but 2 of them were the later different variation, the P5Y. The other 11 were the R5, and it was R3. I'm sorry, R3Y. And to me, that's one of those things that if you'd continued to work with it, you might have found a niche for it, because it's not the kind of airplane that oops, sorry, going the wrong with it. It's going to be pretty specialized, but every once in a while, you just need something like that. One of the problems you run into, though, is when you have specialty, and we're going to be talking about this because it's a problem that all the airplanes on this list had. When you only run a small number of them, they become orphans really quick. The company cannot continue to support something like this unless the parts are ungodly expensive, because you don't have any economy of scale. And the Navy operated for a few years between the technical problems they were having with them, other aircraft that could basically do the mission, the desire, they figured we don't really need the float planes anymore. Combine that with, Convair had to make every part for that airplane pretty much as a one-off, except for the engines and props. And it gets really expensive to operate. And it just becomes impractical. Until the day that you really wish you had it and you really need it. And good God, that airplane is right out of a James Bond movie. And so that is another one that I'm glad Revell made the kit of it. Of course, they made it when the airplane was in service. But it would be really nice if somebody was to make a new, more detailed model of it. Maybe get the option to make both versions. The problem you run into is I don't know if they'd sell or not. And so there you go. Next, we have Ken's favorite, the XF-12 Rainbow. And you can put the Hughes XF-11 beside this. Both of them they only made 2 Rainbows and a couple of XF-11s. But the airplane, as Mike has points out, is the fastest 4-engine piston airplane ever made. And, of course, it looks like a B-29 that went on a diet, and it was made by Republic. And it had a photo lab in the airplane, so instead of delivering film, by the time they landed, they had developed photos. It was a great idea that did what it was, of course, very trouble-plagued because there were only 2 of them. It was a prototype. They were pushing engine technology to the very limits and operating some pretty extreme conditions. I think they could get up to like 40,000 feet. I mean, it was an impressive piece of machinery. Part of me is like, yeah, they should have just slapped turboprops on it and kept the program going. And that jets were coming in at that point. This is another airplane that suffered more from bad timing than anything else. You had a lot of these really, really cutting-edge piston engine airplanes that were at the very pinnacle. And then people are like, hey, look, I've got a jet. It doesn't have propellers. It can go higher and faster. And people are like, okay, why are we dumping money into this thing? Of course, that thing had range that the early jets didn't have. But and they did operate it for a while, learning what they could out of it. It's just things had been a little different. Pan Am actually was looking at ordering some of them, but I think they wanted like 100 of them for high-speed, airliner service, because back then most airliners were carrying, 60 people? But they were like, hey, yeah, those would be great. We'll beat the competition across the ocean. But then right behind it, you have the Connies and the DC-6s and everything. And it didn't happen because they needed the Air Force to buy them. Otherwise, the airline would be paying too much for parts. Gets back to our economy of scale issue. The French learned that with their Mercure, which was a jet that looks a lot like a 737. and it was made as a short to mid-range jet, which it was, and it was actually a pretty good airplane. I think they only made about 10 of them. The 737 would have been a direct competitor for the 737, except for basically, as I understand it, one decision. The 737 was also a short to mid-range jet, but they put big enough fuel tanks in it that it could fly long range if you wanted it to. And that gave it a versatility the Mercury didn't have, and they designed it from the ground up as a short-range airplane. They didn't have any place to put extra fuel, so it. And the people who flew them said, "Oh, they're great little airplanes. They just didn't have any range, and they didn't have the versatility of the 7.3." Thus, the rest of that story. But the only people I know other than balsa kits are Anagrand that make it, and again, I don't think it's a big kit, 1 to 144 scale, which isn't so bad when you're dealing with a big 4-inch airplane, but you do save some shelf space, but still, every once in a while you want to get something like that in 1/72nd or maybe even 1/48. Problem being, I don't think anybody's going to do that because you're talking about how many would you sell? 3,000? And that's although it's got pretty clean lines, probably wouldn't be the hardest model to kit up, but could have been, should have been, would have been. And one of my personal favorites now, we have the Lockheed R6V. Lockheed didn't. I don't really think they had that much success with big airplanes until they got the C-141 and the C-5. Because the L-1011 bit them in the rear end. They didn't sell enough of them, which is sad because it was a great airplane. Everyone I knew flew the L-1011. Oh, man, they talk about it like they had a Ferrari. But the R6V, which, of course, shocker, Anagrand makes the model. But B-29 engines, which were kind of problem. My dad was a mechanic on B-29s. Those engines were always problematic. Again, trying to squeeze a lot out of a little. But the Navy only got 2 of them. They were considered underpowered. They tried to sell them to Pan Am, and it was kind of the answer to the Convair's XC-99, which basically was even bigger. It was basically a B-36 set up as an airliner. Although both of them did see service. And this thing, I think they used it for about 10 years. Of course, what they paid for it, I'm not surprised. They want to get some utility out of it. I think they used it primarily flying personnel coast to coast. But what a beast. The problem is, with an airplane like this, is that you're going to find that when they don't, when they retire the thing, it becomes a bit of a boat anchor. Okay, you've retired it. Where the heck are we going to put it? Well, one guy had an idea. Hey, let's park it by my FBO, and I'll use it basically as a sign for an airplane gas station. And I'm thinking, man, that just ain't right. To take this princely-looking beast of an airplane and just park it out at your FBO as a, hey, buy gas here. Why not just paint good eats across, the nose section? And, oh, man, that's kind of humiliating. Although I guarantee a lot of people taxied over to get gas because they wanted to get a closer look at that beast. And that's just not the way an airplane should end up. Well, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I guess it's a step better than going to the scrapper, which I guess is what eventually happened to it. And I'm not sure, but I think it actually may have ended up outside of a regular gas station at some point, but it may have just been the FBO. What was that ship? Was it the Great Eastern? That gigantic ship they built, big as the Titanic, 40 years, 50 years before the Titanic, was the 1860s. And the thing was so big, except for laying the transatlantic telegraph cable, you couldn't make money with it. So it wound up being a floating billboard in New York or someplace. So, yeah, then the cells are essentially individual P-47. It does have that look, but different engines. It does look like 4 P-47s in type formation, doesn't it? And but I wonder what it was like to fly something like that. I know they didn't have much of a power reserve. I don't even know if it could stay in the air on 3 engines, but they didn't have any mishaps with it, to my knowledge. All right, what do we have up next? Coming up next, we have. There's the anagram kit. I think there were one other two resin makers, but I don't think anybody makes a styrene kit of it. Not even Mach 2, I don't think. Okay, now this is an airplane that actually a lot of people, even aviation buffs, are unfamiliar with. The B-32 Dominator. And this was an operational bomber. They built 118 of these things. What it was the backup in case the B-29 failed. It was a simpler airplane, which, by the way, if I'm not mistaken, actually had a longer range. But they did do some photo reconnaissance missions. Now, the B-32, the B-29 was so complex that they weren't sure they were going to work the bugs out of it and be able to make it operational. Like I said, my dad was a WB-29 mechanic, and those airplanes are ungodly complicated because they did all these incredible things, but it was all, analog or mechanical. And it even had a little APU, which was a piston engine APU. They called the putt-putt. But they wanted a backup airplane in case the B-29 failed that was basically just simpler. And so the B-32 was designed. And it was a Douglas design, very straightforward. From what I've read about it, it was an okay airplane. It couldn't do some of the things a B-29 could do, but it didn't have any particular vices. And if I read correctly, the last American serviceman killed in World War II was a photo technician on one of these airplanes. Japan had surrendered, but the surrender didn't go into effect until a certain date. So we were sending recon flights over to make sure they were complying with the surrender terms, one of which was they had to pull the propellers off their fighters and put them in the grass in front of the airplane so we could take photos of it. Well, we were sending these guys over every day, but this thing didn't go into effect until the day it went into effect. And the day before it went into effect, one of these guys went on a photo mission taking photos and got jumped by Japanese fighters. The plane made it back, but one of the crewmen was killed by gunfire. And I believe he was the last serviceman killed during the war. And the next day, they flew over and nobody came up, and they photographed them. All the propellers were laid in the grass. But the Japanese attitude was, until that went into effect, we were still at war. And oh, by the way, if there's one thing we learned is one American bomber can do a lot of damage. And we don't know if you're carrying a camera or another atom bomb. So, but the B-32 is kind of forgotten to history. And again, another kit that someone consider making 1/72nd scale, but the resin guys right now are really your only options. So there's that. And not the most elegant or beautiful airplane. That tail is so big, which I assume it had to be because they didn't do that for kicks and giggles. Lord, that's a massive rudder. But there you have it, the B-32 Dominator. And I don't think any of these, by the way, none of any of the examples of any of these airplanes exist today, if I'm not mistaken, except maybe some pieces. Let's see. The S-42 from, I believe, came off the S-40. 1934, one of the early long-range flying boats, and Sikorsky design. They only made a handful of these things. They only made 3 of its predecessor, and then they made about 10 of these. But one thing that makes these airplanes very different, and again, resin is your only real option on these things. It's just nobody makes styrene kits of them, sadly. You can get wooden models, carved wooden models made of them. But these airplanes, Sikorsky knew that, unlike today, there was no way he was going to sell 1,000 of these things. He knew when you design these things, you know you're going to sell 10 or 20 or 30 of them. So basically, the pricing for these airplanes has to be enough that the company makes a profit selling just an individual one, because there's never going to be an economy of scale. But that was normal back then. There wasn't really that much aviation to begin with. There were some small planes that were made in big numbers, like Piper Cubs and stuff, but for the most part, even light twins were made in small numbers. Generally speaking, the bigger an airplane gets, the less of them you're going to make, because there's fewer people that have a need for it or can afford to operate it. And the Martin M130s, all that say was just they knew these were going to be limited run airplanes, and there's none of these left. There are a handful of Sikorsky, the smaller Sikorsky flying boats flying around. I know Kermit Weeks got a couple of them. In fact, I think he has Howard Hughes' old plane, and it's unfortunately, since these airplanes aren't much in the public mind when it comes to like I say, to build a model, all you have is a resin option. There's really not much else there. And let's see. Where's my... There it is. So those are examples of some aircraft that no examples of them exist today. Some of them I don't even think any parts are around. And also and there are a lot of other limited run aircraft. I just didn't have time to source all the pictures together. Some of them, however, like the XB-70, everybody loves to make it because it's a beautiful airplane. They only made 2 of them. One crashed. And so there is one left, though. It's in the Air Force Museum of the United States Air Force. And I've been God, that is a big airplane. It is. It's bigger than it seems. Guys, I got something going on here. I got to run out of the room for just a second. I will be
Please
right back.
don't tell Scotty the warp drive won't light. The wires and LEDs fit is too tight. Forbidden Planet Star Cruiser looks like it died. The Millennium Falcon looks like I pimped my ride. My Star Trek ships got a tilted nacelle. The saucer section's gone straight to hell. Robot from Lost in Space is laughing at me. The whole shuttlecraft is stuck on my knee. Please don't tell Scotty the warp drive won't light. The wires and LEDs fit is too tight. Forbidden Planet's testing my grace. Lost in my work on Lost in Space. Why do the lights flicker? Why won't they glow? I soldered and taped, but the power won't flow. Captain Kirk would never deal with this mess. I think I'm losing my model builder finesse. Skywalker's X-Wing sags, no matter how hard I try. I glued it back on, now it looks like a Y. The Jupiter 2 looks like a big tater chip. I'll use the Death Star as a bowl for some dip.
Okay, we're back. Luckily, I caught the cat before the snake ate it. So, switching gears to another related subject. All of us are looking for something different to do. We've all built so many, Corvettes or Mustangs or, B-17s that everybody keeps looking for something new to do. And although it's an ignominious end for an airplane, after the war, as we all know, airplanes were dirt cheap, and a lot of them ended up being put on top of buildings, gas stations, things like that, as a way to attract attention. And if you've got a model sitting on your shelf and you're looking to do something different, it doesn't take much of an internet search to start seeing all kinds of airplanes that were used for this stuff, so you can make your little diorama or just do something different with it, just to have a new modeling challenge. Now, fortunately, I found out that this particular P-40 was eventually rescued. You have to remember, it's hard for us to believe it now, but after the war, these were just old junker airplanes. They were cheap. And nobody thought anybody's ever going to want this thing for anything. It can't carry any passengers, jet airliners are coming out. It's just an old airplane. Well, eventually it got purchased, and It was put back into flying condition. Regrettably, I found out that about 20 odd years ago it crashed, and I think it killed the pilot at an air show or something. So that airplane sadly was lost, but at least we know that for a while it was back in the air. Personally, I think this is a horrific thing to do with an airplane, but I mean, it's just, oh, the ignominy. But, you know, it's just something different. And, the French Fiasco. There's another one here that's, now this one is the amuse-bouche. Now I have to show you the one that's just unbefrickin-leavable, and I'm kind of like, okay, where to put that picture? Oh, that's okay. Where is it? There's P40. Did I not load it in here? Well, let me run grab it real quick. I think I swore. Oh well. Image. And if you think a P40 on top of a gas station is something, well, why don't you try a B17 on top of a gas station? And that is real. The guy would let people go up and walk through it. You can see him going up the stairs in the back. And apparently he had it on there for a long time, too. That is a big, heavy piece of airplane. That I don't know if that's the California B-17 or a different one. Apparently it was not the only B-17 to end up like this. And it stuns me, first off, that Billy could hold that up there. I got to admit, I'm kind of impressed. But the, and I've seen other airplanes. When I was a little kid, I want to say it was when I would visit my grandparents in Tampa. There was some kind of amusement park they took us to, and it had a B-25 Mitchell sitting in the middle of it just as a display. Apparently, they used to let kids go up in it, but they tore it all up, so they closed it. So by the time I went there, I was probably 5 years old. You couldn't go up in it anymore, which obviously ruined my day. But I would sit there and just stare at it because I was an airplane nerd. And, yeah, I don't think that's a California one either. Some of you guys may recognize these. The Russian AN-2s, the big square box biplanes. Apparently, one of the favorite things the Russians would do with those things when they were taken out of service is they would swipe the fuselage and make a little cabin out of it and live in them. And probably no worse than living in Winnebago. But, you know, part of me is like, oh, what an ignominious sin. But then the other part of me is like, well, you know, people are getting to tour it and everything. At least it's still alive. And I do believe this B-17 is in the process of being put back in flying condition. You can tell by the chin turret that it's a G model. And but then again, there's another modeling idea. Build yourself a little, I'm just thinking a little diorama idea, something different. And there's one more. There's a bunch of them out there. I've even seen a few of them out in the real world. But there's one more, and it took me a little while to kind of identify this. I think that's a Vultee BT-13. The wingtips are missing, and this was actually out there fairly recently. But it looks like it's got a Vultee BT-13 tail. And it's a two-seater, obviously. The flaps look like they're gone. So, and the wingtips are gone, but it's got a straight wing, like a 13. And anyway, I think that's what it is. But it was on a mini mart. I mean, oh the pain. But I was going into Boston, and I looked down and I see a Cherokee, or maybe it was a Grumman. I think it was a Cherokee, screwed into the ceiling of a building, and it was a local bar, and they bought a junker light plane with no engine or anything. You just bolted the firewall of the ceiling, and the name of the bar was north. I guess it'd be north of the airport, and it was I forget, something like the crash or something like that, the crash pit. I don't remember. Anyway, I never actually went to it on the ground, but for the longest time I would see the thing going in. I'm like, I wonder if pilots have ever. I asked the controller, pilots ever reported a crash airplane? And they go, yep, about once a week. They don't know that it's, they're just like, and they all figured out what it was. Like, well, we ought to say we ought to say something, but. There again, if you've got like a junker model or something, especially if you have a railroad layout, there's something you can do with your junker models. And just one of those ideas. But anyway. So now it's time for me. Max, you just buried the lead. Well, I don't know what the story is, but... A friend of mine bought a Taylor craft that hung from the ceiling in a clothing store at the mall. They gave 24 hours to get it down. No, I also wondered if it might be an SBD, but I'll tell you why I don't think it is. Well, you know what? Since you brought that up, it does have that look for that tail, but and I can't sit here and swear that it's not. It's possible it's an SBD. I don't think it is. And I don't think it is for a couple of reasons. The tail. Do I have a model SBD in here? The SBD has a little bit of a flare going from the horizontal stabilizer to the fuselage, like a fillet. This doesn't. This goes straight in like the BT-13. And the wing does not appear to be the right shape. Of course, parts of it are missing, but let me... there's also, if you look right here, let's see if I can get this blown up a little bigger. If you look right there on the leading edge of the wing, there are no high lift slats. The SBD has those 3 slats on each side. I don't think it has a big landing light there either. And I don't see room for the perforated dive brakes, so I don't think so. That looks like a Vultee tail. For a second, I wondered if it might not be a Vindicator by Chance Vought, but the Vindicator has a big solid area between the front and back seats that this doesn't have. Let me grab a picture of a BT-13 real quick to show you guys what I'm talking about. Let's see. The Valiant. Here we go. Okay, that's a good... Ooh, I like that one. Copy image. And paste. Crop. File. Takes a few steps here, sorry. Okay. Let me add the... First off, let me get this back to scale. Transform. Fit screen. Image. Okay. Now here is a real Vultee BT-13. Can I rotate this thing? And I don't see a rotation of it. Rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. There we go. And let's put that there. And let's put this here. And you see what I mean about the tail. It's got the right amount of tail cone after it. It's got the straight wings. Canopy's the right size. So, and it's got the perfect, the very round fuselage. So, fairly, and it's also got the landing lights. Let me zoom on this a little bit. You see the landing lights in the leading edge of the wings on both sides. So, and the back canopy seems to match the framing. So pretty sure that's a BT-13, which in itself, by the way, is not a cheap airplane these days. I remember we could get one for about 40 grand, but I think they're up around 100 now just because of rarity. And they're kind of the poor man's T6 fixed gear, 450. They're not a hot performer. It was a basic trainer. It was guys would go out of the Stearman, the PT, the primary trainer. They go to the Stearmans and the Ryans, and where they just learn to fly. Then they would get into this and get used to flying something heavier. And this one's in Civil Air Patrol markings. And this had a completely military cockpit in it and anything. And then they would go from there to the ATs, the advanced trainers. And the BTs, though, could hurt you, for certain sure. A fellow I knew who learned to fly in World War II in the military was telling me that he, when he was flying the BT-13 in training, the instructor said, okay, I want to show you something. And they took the airplane, and he said up to about, I think he said about 3,500 feet. And he goes, I want you to put it in landing configuration. So he throttles back, gets the speed back, drops the flaps, gets it set up like he's doing an approach to land. And he goes, okay, now I want you to cob the power to it, like you're doing a go-around. Again, he just slammed the radial engine, he just slammed it forward. Well, that 450 came to life like that, and the airplane just went right over on its back. And it just torque rolled on him. And they got he finished, he took it on through and leveled it out and cleaned it up. And the instructor was like, you get the message? You go, yes, sir. You do a go around in this thing, you ease the power in with the rudder, and be smooth about it. Because you slap it all at one time, that engine catches. Unless you're standing on that rudder, it's just going to right over on you. And that was 150 horsepower shy of the T6, which had a 600 horse on it. And, of course, retractable landing gear. Now, even though the T6 flew like a fighter plane, and everybody I knew that's flown them loved them, they're still not that fast. They had nothing like fighter plane speed. And but the T6 was the last thing you flew before you went into a real fighter plane. They didn't have any two-seat trainers back then for the most part. That's why those rare TF-51Ds and some of the two-seat P-40s were manufactured. Two-seat Spitfires that were losing too many guys in mishaps. And I was in CAP 50 years. Yeah. My dad was active in the CAP in our hometown, and they had a Cub Cruiser. And him and about a half dozen other guys were active. They didn't wear uniforms or anything. It was literally civilian. But this is, of course, going back to the 60s. But they did a lot of, they did flying them around a little bit. We're going for rides in it with him. And they reworked those to be Japanese torpedo planes in Tora. Yes, they did. The BT-13 that you see right here was dressed up as you see it to be the Val dive bomber. They put the spats on it and faired the tail and gave it more of the outline. It does not have the wing of a Val. If you Val has that almost double elliptic wing. Then the BT, as you can see there, has a very straight wing, but it's pretty convincing at a distance. And the Val, of course, had the big spats, but if you look at a real Val in the one of the movies, the Val's spats are longer and sleeker, but they had to, go with what they had. There are no Japanese. There's 1-0 flying, and it's a light war model, like an A6M5, I think. You can tell by the external exhaust sticking out of the cowling. There are no Kates or Vals flying. I don't even know if any Kates or Vals are in one piece. All of their museums are in chunks. They're trying to rebuild a Betty, I think, over in Japan. They found one, and it's going to probably be almost an all-new airplane, just using the old one as a template, but they may be using some of the major, but it'll strictly be a museum display piece. But what they did for the Kate torpedo planes, and it was really clever. And the one reason it looked so convincing was they took the front end of a T6 and the rear end of a BT-13, and they extended the fuselage to be a 3-seater, and they had to work out all of the weight and balance and everything to get it all to work. I'm assuming that the BT-13 tail is probably a little lighter than the one on the T6, which probably help, or maybe they use counterweights, but Those things are still flying. They did really good work on them. I mean, apparently the quality of the workmanship was pretty good because they're still flying. They also did something else in Tora that there's no way you could get them to do today. The Navy actually let them fly off of an aircraft carrier. They actually did a carrier trap in a T-6 where a Fachita when he traps on the carrier, and at the beginning of the movie, and they also now that launch scene in Tora is supposed to be at dawn. I think they actually did it at sunset, and that way they could get most of the planes, and they could just how they did it. But remember, none of them recovered to the carrier. They all flew. It was just offshore. They just all flew to shore and landed. But still, the work that went into making that movie and all those airplanes, they hired a company it was an engineering firm, aviation engineering firm. They did all the engineering, made them look right, and just phenomenal work. Most of them are still flying today. I actually saw a few of them. They were using everything since then. Black Sheep and Midway and you name a production. When they did the Winds of War, they got some SBDs flying, and what they did was to thicken out the numbers. If you look in the Winds of War, you see the SBDs flying, but the airplanes like number 3 and 4 in formation don't look quite right. That's because they were using T6s, painted up like them. And to someone like us, you're going to catch it real quick. But to the average person, T6 looks so much like an SBD, they fit right in. It's a good stand-in for it. And the Ki-4 at Kagoshima is still flying. Well, interesting. There's I think it's a Ki 43 somewhere that they run the engine. I don't know if it flies or not. Apparently, a Russian company was contracted, and some of you guys out in California may know more about. Not me. I'm sure you do know more about it than I do. But they built 3 Japanese Zeros from scratch. I mean, just from plans. And one of the problems they ran into when they're trying to restore, there have been a couple other Zeros that have been restored, but they were like the one, I think it was not Pete Regina. He had the P-51B. There was a guy who restored a Zero. It had been in a junkyard. It was one up in Atlanta for a long time with a gun shop in the back, just a derelict. And the guy wouldn't sell it because he knew what it was worth. I think somebody finally got it. But the airplane, they basically was used as a pattern. They said about 70% of the airplane was new aluminum. It had to be. But it's still a multi-million-dollar airplane. Just the fact it's got some Zero parts. But the only all-original one, I think, is the one out in Chino. That flies. There are a few in Japan, but they're just on display. And they're, quite frankly, I think, too valuable to fly. But the Russians made 3 of them from scratch. And they apparently, as I understand it, were so poorly made that then we got to the States, the guys wind up pulling them apart. I think even bucking some of the skin off of them and cleaning them up, and spending as much money as it cost to have them made in having the quality brought back up and good. But there's footage on YouTube of the 3 of them flying in formation. Now, of course, they got Pratt & Whitney engines in them, but I was just surprised that somebody would go through that much trouble. But that's how bad people want these things. There's been at least 3 replica Me-262s made right here in the United States. I think one of them's a 2-seater and 2 of them are single-seaters, or I may have that backwards. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen, they've been on the cover of a lot of magazines. Now, they have CJ610 engines in them, which are off of Learjet, so they actually probably perform a lot better than the original 262. They don't have any weapons or armor on them, but the cockpits were made to look authentic, although they have much more modern parts behind a period-looking cockpit. But you look at a real Messerschmitt 109 or Me-262, and you realize just how, for lack of a better word, crudely made some of these things are. And the 262 in particular, when I looked at it, you go see the one in the Smithsonian, and now mind you, it's 70 frickin' years old, but you're like, yeah, it was great engineering, but as everyone knows, the Germans were running out of the materials they needed and everything. You look at the Messerschmitt, you're like, man, that's actually a little cruder. I think the Zero is a little bit nicer quality control. And you learn around and look at the Spitfire, and it's just handmade. And you look at the Mustang, and it's like a freaking Cadillac. I mean, everything's flush riveted, just like. Spear was flabbergasted after the war. He's after he got out of prison, he's touring in museums and seeing these Mustangs and everything. He's like, my God, you made these things the last 50 years. We made them the last 50 hours. And by the way, that P-61 Black Widow that they're restoring, it's they don't have the wings on it yet, but it's coming along nicely, looking good. I think there's some guys out there in the UK or somewhere working on a bow fighter. There are probably more Mustangs flying now than there were 30 years ago and other stuff because people are spending ludicrous amounts of money to make them, to keep, restore them and everything. Yeah, basically started production runs of KI-43, FT-1, and 262 and the I-16. I'll take you know what? I'm a jet guy. I'll take the ME-262. If not that, the FW-190, which I think is the airplane. And Eric, I need you to chime in on this. I think the FW-190 is the airplanes that the Germans, for their sake, should have produced in bigger numbers. I know the 109s were cheap to produce and they were set up for them, but I really think they would have been, just given the number they lost in landing accidents, which is, I forget what, 13% or something. 190 with that wide track gear, and the 190 with that more or less a bubble canopy, much better visibility. I know the big radial engine made a bigger target, which is true, but anyway, Chinese have a complete P-61. Ooh, I wonder what they want for it. 100 P-51 kits of all scales. That does not surprise me. I actually tried to research one time because this is the kind of nerdy stuff I do. Mid-Atlantic Air Museum reading. Yeah. I forget where I was a while back. Then I saw three of the Tora Zeros, and man, they look all polished up. Anyway, what the heck was I just talking about? Boy, but the I'd love the 262 just because I'm a jet guy. But the 190, it was not good at how to. Well, I don't think any of the German planes are doing particularly well, except for their. Some people think it was the Dora. That's the one they should have put up in. The other thing it should have been the go-to airframe. Yeah, it definitely is more flexible. And Trey was showing me me and Fran a Model 309 that he built, and actually made me dig out my 309. I want to build that now. Of course, I want to build everything. The 309 was the attempt to put a lot of money and effort into make a replacement for the 109. And its tricycle gear had the tail off the ME-262, and it was a total dud. They added all this weight to it and everything. The 109 was a very, 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 very economical airplane. They had every trick to reduce the amount of aluminum needed in it. They knew how to do it. They were set up for it. It was cheap. It was competent. But they just pushed that airframe beyond its expiration date. They wound up, the K model, I think, was the last one. And whereas the 190 lent itself to these modifications much better. It was a much more durable airframe. But just the reduction in accidents would have almost justified the changing over to the 190. But, I mean, it didn't really, in the long run, none of this would have mattered. They could have been making all the ME-262s they wanted. They were still going to lose the war because we were eliminating their industrial base. And, of course, then there's the whole atomic bomb thing if it had come that far. The most they could have done was probably just extended the war another. I'm, of course, totally looking to a crystal ball here. But my guess is the best they could have done if they hadn't listened to De Fuhrer and they had gone ahead and just made ME-262s and gone air superiority, we would have fielded the P-80. The British already had the Meteor, and I know they probably would have had a tough time competing with the 262, but the metallurgy was better, and our factories weren't getting bombed. At most, I'm guessing they could have extended the war 6 months or maybe a year to 46, and that would have just, like I say, it would have pushed it back. Nothing was going to change. The outcome was that I believe, and again, there are a lot of counterfactuals that make good arguments both for and against what I'm about to say. I'm totally just, looking into my crystal ball. But I think that the Fuhrer and company lost the war the day they kicked the door in on Russia. That's, man. Oh, look. There's a country with 180 million people, 3 times as many people as we have, all unlimited resources, unlimited manpower. Yeah, let's just go kick the door in and take that place over. Like no army has ever successfully done in history, just ask Napoleon. And the Russians, they knew, all we got to do is pull back behind the Urals and let the Russian winter do the job for us. But you'll never be able to make a movie again using real aircraft because it's all CGI now. Nate, you're right. And I have to admit, some of the CGI has gotten so good. But how can I put this? I don't know if you know this, when they did Memphis Belle, all those B-17s in the background, when they're taxiing out, were just Syrettes. I mean, all you got to do is fool the camera. But what a lot of folks don't know is, and this is really cool, the scene where the scenes where they're taxiing, I think it was only the first 3 airplanes were real airplanes. The rest were all elevated models. And they had spinning props and everything. But it's like, where'd they get 9 B-17s? And then somebody showed me they didn't, like, oh man, that's just cheating. Or maybe it was the models were up close and the real ones were far off. I forget, but it was all forced perspective. And the thing about forced perspective is you can't move up or down. There's an angle where it's convincing. You move up or down a couple of degrees and everybody can, because it's the way the space is interpreted by the mind. The human eye is both incredible at picking out proportions, but it misses a ton of details. Which is why you look at a lot of the Hollywood models up close. You go, this movie, they had the greatest models, and you see them up close, and like, my God, I can make better and better looking one of those with a Revell kit. And they're like, yeah, but it was only on camera for 7 seconds, and it was moving, and we grained the film, and da-da-da-da-da. And General Winter, yeah. But the documentary Europa, The Last Battle, pretty much explained it all. Yeah, if that's one movie I'm thinking, Europa, where the little Jewish kid hides out inside Nazi Germany as a Nazi and in the SS and everything, and in the German army, and what do they call that? Passing. And that's that 198 instead of the Stuka. Yeah, the Stuka should have been retired before the Battle of Britain. That was an airplane that soldiered on way past its expiration date. I don't know why I love the Stuka so much. I know it's a symbol of the bad guys, and it's airplane that was, as my brother likes to say, so it needs to be shot down just for how offensively ugly it is. There's just, maybe because I grew up around crop dusters, I see a Stuka, I say, that could make in fact, I kit bashed a Stuka into a crop duster. I'm like, that's a natural crop duster. And I don't know, the airplane just has interesting lines, with the inverted gull wing and the spatted wheels, and the big, especially the early model B models, the big scoop up front, and the D model looked much sleeker, if you can call a Stuka sleek, if those two words can go together. I'm just reading some of the comments. I think you're talking about the scene where Gandalf is in the Hobbit house with with Frodo, and I saw a documentary on that, and they use forced perspective and a moving set, and they totally sold it. Hollywood understands this; they know the angles and how to do this. It's an art form, but Memphis Belle did it, and a lot of movies have. I've done it. I took some photographs one time, and I just put different scale tanks at different distances, and I used a drone. And when it was on the ground, it all looked bright. And as soon as that drone lifted off, instantly you could tell that they were all different sizes. Like a lot of, so ugly it looks good. Yeah. And for those unfamiliar with the Lada, when I was in Panama, I saw a bunch of them. And the little Lada Jeeps were actually very popular, pretty rugged, and they were cheap, kind of like a Gaz. And they're not the prettiest things around, but apparently little Jeeps and stuff are pretty indestructible. And their trucks, I'll take an American Willis any day or 4GPW, but the Kubelwagen, when the thing came out, the Volkswagen thing, when did it come out, like 1970 or something? And the Volkswagen thing comes out, and the first thing that popped in my head is, that's a freaking Kubelwagen. It's a little bigger, but I used to think the thing was the coolest little thing around. And even in, what was that movie, Spaceballs, I think they painted up the body of a thing in like a Kubelwagen to make Dart Helmet's little vehicle. And I was like, that's a thing. And you'd see them in movies and stuff. And then, of course, they were all junked out. And now they are expensive as the dickens because they all got scrapped like the Beetles. The Beetle was a disposable car. Oh my God, how many times have I ridden a Volkswagen Beetle? But I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and I was near Tallahassee, which is a college town. So the vehicles I saw all the time, and imagine some of you guys have the same experience. The Honda 65, which I thought was a real motorcycle because I was like 6 years old. My brother used to ride around on one. And the Volkswagen Beetle, which was almost, it was a German Pinto. And then, of course, the van, the bus, the Volkswagen bus, before it was called the Vanagon. And those things were everywhere. And then you hear a real Kubelwagen drive by, and you go, oh my God, it sounds just like a Beetle. Well, sure, why reinvent the wheel? The thing's I absolutely... The Kubelwagen, the thing is just a modern Kubelwagen. I got to just go ahead and give it that boat front and just, Herbie drives again. Yeah, I tell you what, the Herbie the Love Bug movies, they just drip with irony, and I think you guys know what I'm talking about. But the VW thing used the wider Carmen Ghia chassis. Okay, that makes sense. I always thought the Carmen Ghia was the ugliest car on earth, and now they cost you a pretty penny. I just didn't care for the rounded shape. Just like the early Porsches, to me they look more like a Beetle than the Beetle did. They're just a bug, and but I think was it Ferdinand Porsche designed? He had something to do with some of the early Volkswagens that look. I forget what it was, but I'm not sure the Carmen Ghia that was an Italian design body or German design, but I knew people that had one of my science teacher had one, and he was a slender little guy. I mean, my big butt. If I was going to get a Volkswagen in those days, it had to be the van. I actually did have a Volkswagen, but I had a Rabbit, which obviously much later design. And love 60 Squadron mosquitoes. Did you ever notice some of those mosquitoes were glass nose mosquitoes that were painted over with fake guns sticking out the front? And I think that was the last batch of mosquitoes the RAF was operating. That's how they got them. There was some story behind that. It's been so long since I read it. But I think most of those planes, at least a couple of them, are probably still flying. Volkswagen, people's car. Technically people's wagon, but yeah, people's car. Porsche did design it. I thought he was involved with it. And Ferdinand was dipping his beak into everything. But the Beetle, I don't know what your guys' memories of the thing are, but I remember growing up, a lot of people just thought they were unsafe cars. Fiberglass Schwimwagen body for a UTV commercial would be cool. If you could get your hands on some of these things, I'm sure, because I seriously doubt the Germans reinvented the wheel when they designed a lot of stuff. If some of these old vehicles are around, I'm sure you could convert them into at least Hollywood passable Kubelwagens and Schwimmwagons with fiberglass and stuff. Because, of course, okay, let me pose this one to all you gearheads out there. Let's say we're going to make a movie, and we need to make some knockoff Hollywood camera passable Kubelwagens and Schwimmwagons. So obviously we're going to be fiberglassing and stuff, but what kind of car do you put it on? And I assume it's got to be something rear-engined. And of course, Volkswagen unfortunately isn't making the thing anymore. Of course, that's got me curious about something. Just what no. VW thing for sale. I'm curious what those things are going for. And those are all things. You gotta be kidding me. 1971 Volkswagen Westfalia in very nice shape. 70 grand. 72 Volkswagen Bus, 21,000. Man, I knew restoring these things had oh, here we go. Volkswagen thing, classic. Oh, that's not as bad as I thought. 10 grand. I mean, that's not outrageous. Oh, good God. 18 grand, 19 grand, 27. That one's not even in great shape. I thought I saw one for 10,000. There it is. 73 Volkswagen thing, 4-cylinder, auction reserve, starting bid 93.60. Looks like most of them are going in the mid-20s. Dear God, what did that thing cost new? 4 grand? Price of a VW thing when new in the 70s. $3,000. Well, what do you know? I'm going to take a second to read some comments here. Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Eric's pointing out that when they did the movie A Bridge Too Far, they made molds of some of the tanks and just made fiberglass shells and put them on top of Volkswagens, and they called them I think they called them the Doodlebug tanks. Who here called a VW a doodlebug? Because that's what we call them. Because we actually had a bug, and a little insect here in Florida that'll clam up into a complete circle. We call them doodlebugs, and they have they're just completely harmless. It was Ghia in Italy. I thought the Carmen Ghia. That's why I thought the name Ghia was on there. I figure it was Ghia that designed it. It had that Italian look. Garfield, you talking about the Hondas that had the stick shift that came right out of the dashboard? Basically a motorcycle with 4 wheels. Although, pretty good one. There's all these old cars. I miss the days when you hopped in your Volkswagen and doodlebugged over to the local 5 and Dime to buy a brand new, Revell monogram model, and red tube testers enamel paint. By the way, working on the Betty today, a couple of parts I decided to paint. They said it's a silver like the I guess it's a trim wheel or something that goes on the actual greenhouse canopy before you glue it in, and I've had trouble getting the acrylic chromes and silvers to work well. You know how they want to separate and keep stirring them, and they just don't go on. They're more probably go on better with an airbrush, but even so, the silver and chrome are the colors with acrylic that don't work so great. But the enamels, the testers enamels are fantastic, and then so I use the enamel on it. And one thing I noticed is I've got a little testers silver that I've been using forever. It's still good, and I still have plenty left because I use it just for trim and stuff. I have no idea how many years old it is because one little coat and it goes on so thick, and it just now you really got to give it overnight to dry. But it just astonishes me that people move away from testers enamels because they're kind of expensive and they're very heavy, and the 50-50 mix, and you can put them through an airbrush okay, but that stuff goes a long way. Yeah. Yeah, they didn't have the greatest heaters. Odd, given they're German. Daddy, I painted. Oh, good Lord, John Deere. Never loved that John Deere yellow and green. We had a couple of Beach 1900s at Mesa that were in what back then were the Mesa colors, which was a white airplane with a yellow stripe with thick green trim around it. And we called them the John Deeres. And I always thought that thing made me seasick just looking at it. The Kettenkrad. The Kettenkrad, I was just looking at one somewhere in a museum or something not that long ago. The Kettenkrad is a very misunderstood vehicle. You do not need that front wheel to drive that thing. It is a fully tracked vehicle, and it does have a working differential. The front wheel helps, you steer it around like that, but it can be operated without it. And I'm not exactly sure what the idea behind it was, but it was a utility vehicle that no one else had a direct counterpart to, and the GIs loved them. Everybody who got those things loved them. They were just super handy, and they were powerful. They could tow an airplane or something like that. Hey, John, welcome aboard. We've got John Kitt with us from Scale Model Garage. I'll pop in and say hi. I was pleased. Well, you and I'll have to do a Zoom. You know what, John? Maybe we ought to have you come on the live stream next Saturday night. And John runs his own channel, and a very good one primarily on slot cars. And boy, I'll let you and Steve go at it because they're a couple of supercar guys who with encyclopedic knowledges of cars. Dear God, Eric's still using the Tester's paint from the 60s. Yeah, the paint that will not go bad. Let's see something. The Klee track. Okay. All right. Okay. That's fair. We had a few, we had a little small, a lot of track vehicles that never get any love. Like the M4, was it Fast Carrier or whatever they called it? And we were just talking about that the other day in the M8. I almost bought that. I talked about people want all that money for that Aurora M8 carrier, ammo carrier, cargo carrier that had the lacrosse missile on it, which is something the Army looked at and didn't go with. But Aurora they already made the lacrosse, so they just stick it on the. But apparently, I think they also did the same thing with something else that. There was Honest John or one of them like that. Hey, Aurora was just making stuff up. Hey, we got this missile in this track vehicle. Stick it on there. And I'm not sure if the Army got the idea from them or they got it from the Army. But anyway, high-speed tractors here. There you go. The fork front end acted as a... Okay. I also know that from somebody who said one of the problems with the Kettenkrad, and it's the same problems the Germans had with their tanks, and with any of their vehicles that had interleaved road wheels, was in Russia in the mud. When it got really cold, the mud would get packed in there and freeze, and it made them hard to move. So even though they gave a very smooth ride, there were certain environments like frozen mud that it didn't work out well. Yeah, there was a Goliath. I was actually thinking about okay. I'll shoot you an email. We can Zoom sometime during the week and just BS and catch up. And the Bog Ward, that's the thing I was thinking of, which could be either manned vehicle or remotely operated, and that's what I call the right size tracked vehicle for the for the homeowner who wants his own little tank type tracked vehicle. But I saw one, I think it may be one of the only ones left in the world, at the Military Museum in Hudson, Massachusetts. And I was like, that's a pretty clever vehicle. But you've got all these vehicles because they're not the Sherman tank or the Tiger tank or the Panther tank or that were around that were really cool vehicles, but they're just, and there are kits of them made, but they just kind of largely ignored. Adams helicopter. Oh, I have that very one. I actually have that helicopter on the shelf. I did not put the missiles on it. I have complained about this a couple of years ago, I think on the live stream. It is the stupidest thing. Cessna made one helicopter, and their civilian name, I think, was a Skyhook, and I forget what the Army called it offhand, but it's actually a very highly regarded helicopter. But what Cessna did was to create a lot of room and make for passenger comfort was unlike the Bell 47 where the engine's behind you, or the they put the engine out front like a Sikorsky, but it was an opposed engine, so it's a small. It didn't have that big round radial hub, so you have this engine sticking out in front of the helicopter, the big glass bubble, and apparently a pretty spacious cockpit. And the Army flew it, and they really liked it. They said this is and they liked working with Cessna, very professional, very easy to work with. But what happened was the Army was in the process of going to turbine helicopters. And they also said, look, we really, unfortunately, cannot add another logistics line, another helicopter type and its associated logistics line. And so it didn't. Cessna only made about 50 of them. Very highly regarded. Cool looking helicopter. Well, for some reason, when Adams made the kit, I guess they had a bunch of, because they also made the Hawk missile battery. I guess they had a bunch of Hawk missiles left over. Was need to do something with them, because they decided to put a pair of gigantic heavy Hawk missiles on the aft tail boom. There's no way that thing would fly. First off, it couldn't pick up anything that heavy. Second, it would be so out of center of gravity. And they called it the transport. It's just something they made up, and they pulled an Aurora. And somebody got an earworm. It is the dumbest thing. I don't know how they saw. I just wanted the helicopter. So I got one on eBay for like $10 and just built the helicopter and left the missiles in the box. But I don't know. All I can think is we got to do something with this, with all these Hawk missiles we have. With helicopter transporter kit. Images. Oh yeah, there it is. Copy image. You guys have heard me lament about this before, but I'll go ahead and put it up here just so for those who are not familiar with it, you're going to look at this and go, what were they smoking? Let's see. Yeah, that is almost the definition of, yeah, that ain't going to fly. It's like a helicopter, though. It was a good, solid kit. It's, I think, 1:40 scale, so it doesn't actually scale out with anything. Heavy, thick plastic, nice, gigantic clear piece. Went together, felt like a glove. Got to be careful because it tail rotor protecting guard and everything. Some of those parts are just by the nature they're not real big. You got to be careful not to knock them off. Don't ask me how I know. But rock solid kit, came with some figures and everything. And you have to putty up where they put the holes in the side to put the hooks for the Hawk missiles. There's no freaking way in this universe that thing would ever fly. Fliegel, Bingo, Drooper, and Snork. Oh, God dang it, he did it to me too. Don't even give me a Godzuki never happened. You can't prove otherwise. You know, I know we talked about this here, but the banana splits when Aurora put out the ATVs that they drove around in, the company that made them wanted them to make them out of the same ABS plastic that the real vehicle was made of, Amphicat. And they said, sure. And nobody knew that model airplane glue could not bond ABS plastic. So basically a bunch of kids wound up with models that you either put together with a epoxy resin or screws. Yeah, I refuse to watch what they call the Banana Splits movie. What is it they have? John, I'll let's see. What's more? Let me send you. You know what? I'll do it when we're done here. I'll pop it. We'll Zoom and tomorrow if you're free. Maybe I should start doing that with glue troopers that want to chat. Just have an occasional one-on-one Zoom session. Just kicks and giggles. I was just talking about the Space 1999 buggy. There's one right up there at the Hurricane Hobbies, and I just talked about that in a video the other day because I was thinking that's the kind of kit. If somebody had some, I was thinking it should be a pretty straightforward kit. Oh yeah, Lance, it would never fly. But that'll make a good entry level kit because I mean, I say that without having built the kit, but I'm assuming it's pretty basic and straightforward. And I'm just reading some messages here. Oh. Well, I'll talk to you soon, John. Well, if you want, if you're free tomorrow afternoon, let me know, and we'll do a Zoom, and I'll pop you off an email. And guys, John, if you haven't been out there, Scale Car Garage, and let me see if I've got. I know I've got him saved. I'm a subscriber, so. If you're into slot cars, you have got to chat with him. Actually, he and I did a what was this 5 years ago? We did it's still up, Fast Sports. So Scale Car Garage is the YouTube channel. And I see if you're interested in model cars or slot cars, I recommend you check it out. You're gonna have a great time. He, by the way, makes his own bodies and stuff for a lot of that stuff. He does resins and stuff. Just great work. Way more patience than I got. I'm too ugly for Zoom. I got a face for radio and a voice for the written word. A voice for letters. Torcan. Sure. Maybe we'll set a day aside and try and just contact several people or pull a bunch of people together. I actually have the paid for Zoom, so maybe at some point I'll pull some of us together and let you guys fight with each other. Aha! Game's on. My cousin's the pocket fisherman. Now we're going back. He loves it for travel, time travel. K-Tel, The Pocket Fisherman by Ron Popeil. It slices, it dices, and makes julienne fries and catches tons of fish. And boy, does it catch fish. God, I remember Ron Popeil. Now, if ever there was anybody that personified the American dream. Oh, the Ginsu knives. Okay. What other Ron Popeil goodies do we have? Had that thing where they're supposed to steam cabbage or something. Oh gosh, so much stuff by Ron Popeil. I think he made the 1970s. No comic thing. Oh my God. Yeah, the thing with the microphone. Hey, maybe we'll be back to pick you up in an hour. Where you could hear your microphone over the radio. Oh, I never got that, but I'm sure a ton of kids. They actually did an episode of The Simpsons about that, where Bart gets one of those and finally gets himself in trouble. Sledge-o-matic. I should not have to smash fruit for your humor. Bikes are an addiction worse than drugs. We're talking about motorcycles or bicycles? Because when it comes to bicycles, I can give that up cold turkey. I do love motorcycles, and I got the scars to prove it. The Vegematic. Was it the Saturday Night Live's first skit? I think it was the Bassmaster. I remember the way they get there with chainsaws. They go to some beef restaurant where you slaughter your own cow. Back when Saturday Night Live was fun, Mr. Microphone, that was it. The Bassomatic, yeah, baby. Irwin Mainway of Mainway Toys. The Johnny Rocket Bag of Glass. Manoia can do all those things. He remembers them better than I do. But you look back at that stuff, you're like, man, they really did capture an era. If you do Sludge-O-Matic, I'm not cleaning up. Well, that just gave me a thought. And I actually know which one to answer. What is the messiest model you ever built? I mean, like glue, paint stains, the works, just a complete disaster. And I got a couple of them. My first 148 scale Stewart tank would be in there. God, that thing was just basically fingerprints of glue with a plastic tank inside. Almost like a piece of bad modern art. Johnny Bag of Glass. The thigh mask. Hi, honey, I'm home. Yeah, we all watch the same television. The Meat Wagon. Also Police State. The channel trying to find faces for faceless people. And and an 8-track. I wonder how many people in the early 50s were conceived to the tunes coming from an 8-track. And was that other one with Aramis McCord in Police State. And don't forget, We Are the Killer Bees. And I think my first one was the Scred and Gorsh skits with the Henson's Muppets. And, they live in that dystopian era. And I remember when they were talking about fiscal emergency. What's a fiscal emergency? It means there's no more people to deliver the garbage. Oh, Meat Wagon. My glue bomb was a Hasegawa Emily flying boat in 1967. I actually made an Emily for my Midway documentary. I gave that one to Trey. It was an RE, which micro ace. I mean, Christ, that mold has changed more hands more times. If it's a Mattel, it's swell. Oh, yeah. And Winmac. There's a lot of toys, you just cranked them up. It's motorized, but there was no form of guidance on it. I mean, cars, dune buggy stations, you can just let it go, and it went where it went. Hovercraft. Yeah, back when we were kids, if you said you had a 45, people didn't dive under tables. In the 50s, there were cars with record players. That is correct. That is true. Of course, I had those flow-o-matic suspensions where they could probably get away with that. But let's see. 8-tracks, I guess. When 8-tracks come out? In the 60s? That's a good question. Invented the 8-track, right? I read his bio. It was Bill Lear, the same designer of the Learjet. When did the 8-track tape come out? 64. Okay. So I figure by 1970 they were everywhere. I actually remember driving to Tampa with my mom playing an 8-track, and she had a car full of kids, and we always went ahead, and it was one of those cassettes you would buy that had a bunch of different bands on it, and we knew exactly when to reverse on what channel to hear the songs we wanted to hear. And we want to hear the Partridge Family, and then we want to hear Elvis, yeah, Elvis and the Partridge Families. That was our go-to. We were weird. Yeah, Mattel was actually Matt, and it was the name of the two guys that actually covered them on it. And Slinky. Man, all these toys that save toy companies. That is a brutal industry. Trying to catch up on the comments here. Although, I don't care what they say. I never got a Slinky to keep going all the way down the stairs. I guess I just didn't give it enough inertia. But I think they tilted the sets. Now, I just bought a car. They do not come with CD players anymore. It's all MP3 or your Google Music or whatever. I mean, it still has conventional radio and everything in it, but I don't even know if they'll even put a CD player in it for you anymore. The CD is becoming the cassette, which, video killed the radio star, MP3s killing CDs, CDs killed cassettes, cassettes killed 8-tracks, 8-tracks killed record players, Johnny Lightning, and the name is still around. My Slinky kicked up. It's Slinky. Oh, Silly Putty. That was one of my favorites because you could make you could peel the comics up and everything. And I actually, a glue trooper, it might have been Garfield, sent me some Silly Putty, which I was just using yesterday to mask off some stuff. And it was Trey gave me some of that Aztec stuff, which I use also. But I've learned if it gets hot, if I let it get hot in the shed, the both of them, especially the Aztec, just turns into like oily. So you got to keep it air conditioned. Funny thing, the Silly Putty, I had masked off the tail wheel and painted it, and with Silly Putty, and I just left it overnight to dry. When I came down today, the wheel was still in the clamp and everything, but the Silly Putty had all slid down like extended chewing gum down to the bottom of the. I'd seen Aztec do that. You just wad up the Aztec putty, put it in the can, leave it there. It's like a liquid. It'll just slowly come back into place. It's not made to be on the model that long. I had never seen Silly Putty do that. I didn't yet. Let's see what we got here. Whoops. Whoa, come back here. Go to the mail. Whoops, whoa, come back here. Where's model? Oh, beauty. Yeah, baby. Yeah. You throw that in a room full of model builders, they'll all die for cover. Let's put GB. Da-da-da. And show you guys Bill's glue bomb. Oh, here we go. Plus image. Okay. True glue. Can't see through any window. Some of that looks like dust, but there's your bona fide glue bomb. Little sandpaper. Little floor wax. But I've had a few of them that I'm like, and there's that moment when you know you've lost control of the situation. And am I the only one that ever gets a little anxiety when he first starts to paint over an area that he's got all masked off because you're like, is it really sealed? And one of the things I was noticing today is when I was getting ready to do the Betty is I actually had a bunch of pictures. I was going to put a video together and I realized, oh crap, it's Livestream night. So I'll do that video later. But that Betty is this long, okay? And I have to and you're like going through half a roll of tape to get these things masked off. And there's always that desire to reuse the tape because of stuff, stuff costs money. But don't do it. Don't do it. Don't reuse the tape. You know, because you're gonna get the seepage. It's not gonna work. Fran, it's funny you should mention that. In the 80s, I bought a car, had a radio put in, and the radio, the salesman was showing me, they installed the radio in the car, and I think it might have had a cassette player, but there was a little button up the corner, you push the button, and the whole faceplate with all the buttons and everything came off as one unit. And you could lock it in the trunk or in the glove box, just so when somebody looked in the car, they didn't see a radio, they just saw a black panel. And that was kind of interesting, So I know what you're talking about, pop-out units, and I found one thing was happy. Just leave a motorized rubber snake on the front seat. Well, oh, yeah, I know what you mean. I just built that Lodella Revell 120. No, wait a minute. It was a 132nd scale. I didn't build the 124. My God, a 124 scale Stuka. I'm not thinking about a wingspan like a Condor. Ugh. A bomb that, wow, the Aurora B26. Yep. That's what you do. You paint them silver. It's funny. I saw that very Aurora B26 at one of the hobby shops. I think one was in California. No, it was at the PAMSCon, I think. And it was all complete. And he wanted a few $100 for it, but I was like, I'm not, I've got these kits back here that are on the do not build list, but most of them are $15, $16. But a couple of them were maybe 30 or 40. But $300 for a kit I'm not going to build, it's worth, I think I draw the line at $50. But it's like that Westinghouse nuclear power plant. If I got one of those, I have to build that. But I have to build that because I have an exact scale Godzilla to go with it. So, it's just, you just got to do that. There are some things that simply must be done. I actually understand, though, that those big 124 scale Matchbox kits, a couple people have built those and told me they're really good. Generally, sometimes I found Matchbox kits a little aggressive with the seams and everything. They get the like around the ailerons and the flaps and stuff, and the body panels will get a little deep with it, but that's probably on the smaller scales. The Ancient NPC kit, okay. Well, I've never built one of those big scale NPC kits that I can remember, but I don't think I'm going to make it to Fort Wayne. One of the reasons that I was able to finally go to, besides I always wanted to go to one, was that Ken and I could just jump the car and drive up there. Although it was a hike, but it was. But Fort Wayne, that's a bit of a, and I'm not planning on it. But you never know. I'm not ruling it out. Model Palooza's next month, and honestly I don't even know if I'm going to make that because we have things going on. But I think Model Palooza's in October, if I'm not mistaken, and. But obviously I'll make PAMSCon. I mean, JaxCon is right down the road. But my favorite thing about going to these conventions, I love seeing the models. Obviously, they're fantastic. But my real favorite thing was just seeing what the vendors have, because you find a lot of cool stuff, and sometimes there's really great deals to be had. Bob Azzarelli, maybe some great deals. See, he had a bunch of these 172nd scale kits. He's letting go for $5. Like, fill my bag. I walked out of there like Santa Claus. You just can't say no to that. Inventory that sits on the shelf is of no use to anyone. So, let's see. Well, I hope Ken and Steve are okay. John, I'll pop you off an email, but I'm going to. Hold on. I'm going to be back in just a minute. I need to run check something real quick. No, I do not have a bun in the oven. Be right back.
Please don't tell Scotty the warp drive won't light. The wires and LEDs fit is too tight. Forbidden Planet Star Cruiser looks like it died. The Millennium Falcon looks like I pimped my ride. My Star Trek ship's got a tilted nacelle. The saucer section's gone straight to hell. Robot from Lost in Space is laughing at me. The whole shuttlecraft is stuck on my knee. Please don't tell Scotty the warp drive won't light. The wires and LEDs fit is too tight. Forbidden Planet's testing my grace. Lost in my work on Lost in Space. Why do the lights flicker? Why won't they glow? I soldered and taped, but the power won't flow. Captain Kirk would never deal with this mess. I think I'm losing my model builder finesse. Skywalker's X-Wing sags, no matter how hard I try. I glued it back on, now it looks like a Y. The Jupe.
Okay, sorry. Sometimes when I let the cat and the snakes out at the same time, I have to keep an eye on them. Banana Ball. Strangest baseball game. I'm not familiar with that one. But you can make everyone. Yeah, that's true. I'll let you guys in on a dark secret. I've traveled by air a couple of times since I retired, and I actually buy tickets, even though I can travel for free. The non-rev travel is always an iffy thing, and it's so weird to know that I can actually have a beer at the airport if I want to. It's a complete shift in the way you have to think. I'm coming over and wait a minute, I don't work here anymore. I can't go in the crew room, but hey, I can fart or have a beer or there's nothing near Fort Wayne. If I do make that one, I'll have to rent a car, but maybe I'll go there. We'll see. But there's one other thing I wanted to let you guys know real quick, and I've mentioned it a little bit before. I had a Suno app, which subscription, which we just terminated it, but it's the AI assisted music thing, and I did over 100 songs to stockpile my, which is why you're getting all the AI music, which is what you heard on the intro and you'll hear on the outro. But I do write my own lyrics. Okay, so that. But and I iterate it until I get something I'm happy with, and I've learned to write computer, so it'll say it right. But the crap with the music and the fair use stuff on YouTube has gotten completely out of control. I have picked music from the YouTube music library. It says, here's free music that we own that you can use in your video. And I picked it, and I got popped. I'm like, and there's no play. I was like, you did this, and you can't. And I'm like, well, how do I appeal it? There's no button to push. Would you like to appeal or something? I'm like, so now I'm just wrote hundreds on my own junk. So, the attempting to monetize this channel has been an absolute disaster. One of the reasons sometimes I'm like, I don't even care anymore. You look down, you see for a month, oh look, you're under $1.62. I've got 40 videos this month with over 50,000 views. Well, then I started learning about how the algorithm works. And I've always contended that this channel is for fun. We're here to have a good time, yak with each other, build models, show everybody what we're doing, talk about stuff that's going on. And unfortunately, the algorithm doesn't give a crap. it has what it wants. It wants videos to be 7 minutes long. It wants people to engage for at least 7 minutes. It wants this. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to force feed people a 7-minute video when I've only got 3 minutes worth of stuff to say. So even though technically I'm a monetized channel, I'll probably never see a penny, and I don't care. I'm just going to keep this fun. We're going to have fun with it. But I figured at least with the music, I can do that because that can get you a strike or get you in trouble. And anyway, so trying to stay out of YouTube jail. So I know a lot of you guys do not like the AI music. I appreciate that. I do try to use classical because a lot of that is free use, but you've got people running around out there claiming they own the rights to music they don't have, making people pay them money or royalties or getting, well, if you send me money. And it turns out they never even owned the rights to begin with, but there's so many of them out there. It's just another scam. And so that's kind of what's going on there. So while we can't have nice things, but well, most of the PT boats were, because they take a lot of maintenance because they're plywood. A lot of them eventually were just scrapped. No, I don't do commercials. They offer, and you have to have a certain length of time. No, I don't do commercials. You guys, I wouldn't mind taking a product if it was something that I used or whatever. But my attitude is, yeah, Eric, you're absolutely right. You got to understand, I'm kind of a wannabe movie maker. So to me, a lot of these projects are an opportunity to sort of bring out my inner Steven Spielberg and music and lighting and all that big part. And I have to make way too big of a production out of it. I spend all day working on a 5-minute video. When you're done, it gets some views, yay, and it's forgotten to history. But I'm doing it for me. But I don't. Yeah, I could unmonetize a channel, but just the way I'm doing it now, I don't even think it would make a difference. I think they do watch you a little bit closer when you monetize, but not, I mean, the whole thing's turned into such a mess. I could start putting the stuff on not BitChute or Rumble. I have a Rumble account, but why? YouTube's got the critical mass, and I watch Rick Beato. I really enjoy his channel. I learn a lot from him. I also like the, what's that other one, the Professor of Rock. And you're absolutely right. And they're actually, Rick Beato's become so high profile. He's got millions of subscribers. He's become so high profile that they're actually legal channels that are talking about what's happened to him. And that's part of the problem. It's also erratic. People are just making this crap up as they go along. That's right. You have the problems with well, we did that one and we own it. No, you don't. Beethoven's been dead for hundreds of years. It's public, yeah, but that's our rendition. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Yes, Dale, you're right. The Elko boats were delaminating. In fact, I saw a photograph at the end of the war where 50 PT boats were taken out and burned by the U.S. Navy. And I understand why. They were always a temporary boat. No one, it's just like they were a wartime necessity. It wasn't worth the maintenance to keep them up. Some people got them because they were to use them, but they have to do the maintenance on them to keep them up. And the Navy was moving away from wooden-hulled vessels anyway. And I've seen real PT boats. There are a few of them left. Boston's got a couple of them in a museum, and they're bigger than people realize. But that's absolutely true. That they would delaminate because they were just made to survive the war. Same problem they had with the mosquitoes. They sent the mosquitoes to some parts of the world after the war, and I even think during the war, I think it was Burma, they had trouble with delamination there because of the humidity. It was the Wooden Wonder, a wonderful airplane, but it was just a piece of military equipment designed to be used and then replaced. And well, guys, that's 9 o'clock. And I want to thank everybody for coming out and saying hi. I'll run the outro so you can chat with yourself. Maybe Steve and Ken can be with us next time. John, I will pop you off an email as soon as I hang up here. And if you want, give me a time tomorrow, and we'll see if we can't do a Zoom. And if anybody else wants to have a Zoom session at some point, pop me off an email. I'm not going to commit because I have stuff going on like everybody else, but I will try to get around to it, and we can just yak for a little while and say silly things. Well, from the Ministry of Silly Walks and here at Max of Max's Models, I want to thank everybody come out to spend some time with me tonight, and we'll talk to you later as always. Well, a friend of mine got on to me for doing the left-handed salute. Model on.
Please don't tell Scotty the warp drive won't light. The wires and LEDs fit is too tight. Forbidden Planet Star Cruiser looks like it died. The Millennium Falcon looks like I pimped my ride. My Star Trek ships got a tilted nacelle. The saucer section's gone straight to hell. Robot from Lost in Space is laughing at me. The whole shuttlecraft is stuck on my knee. Please don't tell Scotty the warp drive won't light. The wires and LEDs fit is too tight. Forbidden Planet's testing my grace. Lost in my work on Lost in Space. Why do the lights flicker? Why won't they glow? I soldered and taped, but the power won't flow. Captain Kirk would never deal with this mess. I think I'm losing my model builder finesse. Skywalker's X-Wing sags, no matter how hard I try. I glued it back on, now it looks like a Y. The Jupiter 2 looks like a big tater chip. I'll use the Death Star as a bowl for some dip.
He drew pictures of cars for a hot rod magazine. He worked in the playpen making cars and trucks look mean. Then he got an offer to design a truck in styrene, and that kicked off a line of mean machines. That's how Tom Daniel kits got their start. Model cars and trucks with the coolest parts will live forever deep inside our hearts. Thank you, TD, for our childhood dream cars. The beer truck and mean machine are wicked cool. S-Cool bus and pie wagon models rule. Choppers and cars, he always gave us something new. Rommel's rod and the Red Baron T-Bucket hot rod too. That's how Tom Daniel kits got their start. Model cars and trucks with the coolest parts will live forever deep inside our hearts. Thank you, TD, for our childhood dream cars. Tarantula and the Vampire Trike sat on the shelf beside the Popper Chopper bike. Troublemaker and Sweet Tea are ready for dragging. See the fun those kids in the sand crab are having. I grew up in a world where these models were king. The Tijuana taxi and pie wagon kind of things. That's how Tom Daniel kits got their start. Model cars and trucks with the coolest parts will live forever deep inside our hearts. Thank you, TD, for our childhood dream cars. Thank you, TD, for our childhood dream cars.
I love to cry when everything's okay. I always have something whiny to say. The sun is too bright, the night is too dark. My car is brand new but too hard to park. I bitch and complain, my dear old friend. The gripes just keep coming, they never end. I love to complain, 'cause I've got the knack. I'll smile to your face and sneer at your back. The chair's too hard, the bed's too soft. The neighbors are loud, their dog's always lost. The weather's too windy, the air feels too dry. Your ice cream melts like it's trying to cry. Every silver lining has a stain. I grumble at the sun, and when it starts to rain, I bitch and complain, my dear old friend. The gripes just keep coming, they never end. I love to complain, 'cause I've got the knack. I'll smile to your face and sneer at your back. You'd argue with the mirror for showing your face. You critique a rainbow for being out of place. If perfection came knocking, you'd slam the door, 'cause whining's the one thing you truly adore.
I walked into the shop, a kingdom of dreams. Shelves stacked high, bursting at the seams. Little cars and planes. When I was 10, they called my name. Now I'm 68 and I feel the same. I've got $100, it's burning a hole. My heart's the map, my joy's the goal. A hobby shop, heart never grows old. Plastic treasures in boxes, waiting to unfold. Let the happiness flow and the world rewind. I'm 68, going on 9. Glue on my fingers, a model half built. The clock's ticking fast, but I feel no guilt. Paint stains my shirt, a badge of pride. Lost in a world that time can't hide. A rocket ship, a dinosaur roar. Imagining how I'll sneak it in the door. I'll stay right here till I decide which of these these models will be my pride. A hobbit ship, it bucks, it's burning a hole. My heart's the map, my joy's the goal. My joy's the goal unfold. A hobby shop, heart never grows old. Plastic treasures in boxes, waiting to unfold. Let the happiness flow and the world rewind. I'm 68, going on 9.
Science fiction models on the table again. Strange new worlds in a plastic skin. Starships pose with their flashing lights. Built up dreams done just right. Plastic cosmos holding tight. Neon worlds in the dead of night. Warp drives hum under desk lamp light. Kits and dioramas take me in flight. Cutting sprues with a razor blade. Happy with the kit I made. Alien skies and moonlit haze. Chasing stars through my model maze. I'm a demigod with a cool death ray. Building warp-driven ships on a Saturday. Plastic cosmos holding tight. Neon worlds in the dead of night. Warp drives hum under desk lamp light. Kits and dioramas taking me in flight. Lost in a world of plastic and dreams, staring at panels and sanding down seams. Blue fumes rise and fog my brain. Rockets and saucers and aeroplanes.
Godzilla feeling insecure, cause the Toho version still endures. The Tarbis shields are set to max, cause they're heading right at me and making tracks. Both Godzillas just need to relax. It's a fight, it's a clash, scales and claws, smash and thrash. Over my shed, over my head, it's Godzilla war till one is dead. Ghost of Toho with a ghostly stare, looking down that other reptile's glare. Tail slam, jaw snap, claws thrash, fans clap, the old and new slash and tear. But my poor shed ain't got a prayer. Big scales rain, back blades fly, oh my poor Tarbis even survives a fight. It's a clash, scales and spirits smash and thrash. Over my shed, over my head, it's Godzilla war till one is dead. Legendary's monster lets out a howl. Toho's original answers with a growl. Choosing a favorite is really hard, like watching Trek is picking Kirk or Picard. Just tell me why, settle it in my yard.
The coffee's too hot, the toast is too cold.